Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of the Nonprofit Show. Really interested to have this conversation with the almighty wise woman, Dana Scurlock from Staffing Boutique. How are you, my friend?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Dana, we were talking in the green room. So much is going on in the labor market. And we've talked with you over the years about so many things with staffing, but we've never flipped the script and said, and asked the question, what if you wanted to be a temp? What if you, for whatever reason, loss of job, needing extra income, whatever, that you might look at becoming a temp and entering into this type of very specialized labor? And so we thought, let's go to the font of all knowledge in this topic and ask you about it. It's really kind of an interesting concept, isn't it?
It is. And you know what? I have to say, this was my bread and butter when I started in recruiting back in 2006. I worked specifically in the temporary department of a firm. And so I only spoke with people who are in between jobs that were looking for temporary work specifically. So this is how I really cut my teeth on the industry. So this will be fun.
Yeah, this is going to be a really cool conversation. Again, something we've never had. Something we have every day are our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Holdings Nonprofit Banking, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and JMT Consulting. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Hey, I'm also the co-author of The Architecture of Fundraising. It's our newest book out, published by the American Nonprofit Academy. I co-authored this with the amazing Tony Bell, who's also one of our co-hosts. And it's all about what goes on behind fundraising and what are some of the pillars of success that you can put into place in order to be successful. It covers a wide range of topics and approaches, and you can get it on Amazon for $19.99. Okay, Dana, I had to do my pitch. I'm sorry.
I'm totally behind you. It looks like a fascinating read, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it myself. So kudos to you.
Thank you. It's really been a fabulous project, and to really man up. I am not a great collaborator, and so I had to really stretch myself to collaborate with somebody, and it got me thinking about you and Staffing Boutique and your work. You have to be great collaborators.
For recruiting, yes, it's really a team effort because you have to constantly be recruiting and also coordinate with the client's needs and balancing them with the candidate's needs. And there's multiple candidates and multiple clients, in terms of even within the same organization, there's multiple hiring managers. So it is a very delicate dance between all three parties.
Well, that's why we have asked you to come talk to us about what it takes to be successful as a staff, a temp staff employee. And the first thing I want to ask you about is that part-time and flexible hours, because I'm wondering if this would ever work for somebody who has another job, or maybe they're thinking about changing jobs, or their hours have been cut back. And we have a lot of labor in flux right now. As we have this episode, the government shut down, the administration is letting go staff members across the board, a lot of changes in things. Can this work while you have some other things going on in your life?
Yes, I think that this is a great point to make. I think that temporary work sometimes gets a bad rap, just having been doing staffing and specifically temp staffing for so many years. I think there are people who have realized its utility because when they were in between jobs, it ended up coming in and being an opportunity that really helped launch them and bridge the gap within their career. And then there's some people who have never had to temp before, which is totally understandable if you've gone from permanent job to permanent job. And so the idea of having to sort of stoop to doing a temporary assignment, sometimes you're fighting that stigma, both on the client side and the candidate side. But I think one of the great benefits of temporary work is, number one, it can often fit within your schedule. I have a ton of clients that they just have an extra project that needs to be done a couple days a week, 3 days a week, and they just don't have the bandwidth to do it. That's the perfect opportunity to bring somebody on for an interim position or an interim assignment to help alleviate some of the overgrowth of responsibilities that the full-time staff members have. It's also a way, as an organization, you can bring someone on board and not have to hire them as a full-time salaried, position with health benefits and onboarding. It's a way to kind of fast track getting some of those projects done.
Mhm.
And so as a candidate, the way you can benefit from that is if you have a second job, if you're a grant writer, if you're an event manager, you might kind of work gig to gig is what I kind of would describe it as. And if
Sure.
that's the case, making your schedule a total of 40 hours a week over the course of 2 to 3 jobs, that can actually work out very, very well and work out for the organizations and for the employee. So I definitely think that for people, if you're in school, I have a lot of people that are adults going back to school for their masters, or even if you're a, college, what we traditionally think of as a college age student getting their undergrad.
Mhm.
Temporary work, especially long-term temporary work, can be something that you're balancing with other things going on in your life. Family and work balance is a huge issue, especially since we're all in 2-income households. If you are in a family unit or if you do have children, having the main caregiver have a part-time job might be doable, whereas having a full-time
Yeah.
position with responsibilities is a little too much. So temp work might be a way to bridge those gaps. And so I think that it's a really helpful portion of the job market that a
Mhm.
lot of candidates don't even think about when they're on the hunt for a new position. They're only sorting through direct hire positions online and not even, when you're on, let's say, LinkedIn Recruiter or Indeed or Idealist, are you even checking the box for temporary assignments, or are you only going for direct hire? You may be
Right.
leaving a lot of money on the table because there's some positions you could be doing instead of waiting for 3 to 6 months to get a permanent job. There might have been something you could have picked up quickly and that would have fit with your schedule and left you with the time to interview for permanent jobs at the same time.
Let me ask you this. Do you have to declare this when you are talking about placement? And I'm just thinking about being judged or for good or for bad. Like, oh, well, they work there. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
how transparent should the candidate be?
I think that's a great question, and that's honestly a common concern sometimes.
Okay.
More so when I'm speaking to a candidate and I'm asking them, "Hey, what have you been up to in the past, 3 months since your last job ended?" Turns out they've been working, part-time for another organization or consulting, and they don't think to put it on their resume. It happens all the
Oh,
time. I personally, obviously I'm biased. We place temporary staff all the time. So to me, it's a great thing to have on your resume. I think that it's super helpful because it shows, people that are reviewing your resume for a new permanent job that you're not sitting idle. You haven't been out of the job market for 3 months. It can really happen quickly. 3 to 6 months goes by very, very fast, as we found out during COVID.
yeah.
And suddenly you've got a gap on your resume that's fairly sizable. How much better, in my mind, is it to show that you've actually been working as a consultant or
Mhm.
working on a temporary assignment or on a
Okay.
project for an organization? You never know when those skills or that experience pertains to the direct hire job that you're actually
Mhm.
applying to. And if it's not on your resume, it's basically as good as if you didn't do it. Because I think that once you get into the interview and then you want to talk about, oh, well, I'm actually doing this project right now and I'm converting this database and da 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 da, and it's not on your resume, I think clients can, number one, forget about it when they're reviewing your resume later and debriefing on the interview. It's also just, if it wasn't important enough to put on your resume, I think sometimes can, give the impression that it's not something that you're really gaining a lot of experience and knowledge from. And I
Right.
don't want to sell temp assignments short. I really do think that they are opportunities to learn, to keep your skills sharp, to get exposed to new technical softwares and databases and keeping up with like the latest trends. And
Mhm.
I think also one of the biggest things is it keeps your morale up as a job seeker. Instead of, going into interview saying, I'm in between jobs, you are more of a hot commodity saying, oh, I just finished a job 3 months ago. I'm actually working here on Tuesday, so I can come in for this interview on Wednesday.
Right.
I think is a little bit more attractive and more competitive than saying, I can come in whenever because I haven't worked in 3 months. I'm really ready to get back to
Interesting.
work. I think it's a better
Yeah.
way to make yourself look more marketable.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, let's talk about that a little bit more because one of the traits that you say is going to make somebody successful in the temp marketplace is that they are a quick learner and that they're adaptable. And I think this is an interesting thing because there's certainly a lot going on in the sector.
Hmm.
And when a lot of times it used to be, we would look at a resume and we'd be like, oh, they're the gold standard. They were there for 15, 20 years. And now it's flipped backwards, right?
Yes. The overall tenure, I would say, of workers just across the board has shortened significantly. And
Okay.
as you mentioned, when I first started recruiting, clients wouldn't even look at a resume unless they had 5 years straight with one organization as their last job, you know? And I
Right.
think particularly in specific nonprofit fields like development where the turnover is pretty high, um, it's just not, and just this generation, it's just not a situation where people are staying with the same employer for 10, 15, 20 years at a time. And what I've heard from employers is that they kind of are bulking away from candidates with so much tenure at one place. They view it as, oh, does this person, are they okay with the status quo?
Really important thing. We got Miss Dana back. All right.
I switched devices. Hopefully this is it when it's not Wi-Fi dependent. I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's
Um,
good. So, I think that this is the perfect example of being adaptable, not getting your feathers ruffled, and being able to navigate in a changing thing. Because this is the reality of what happens, right? I mean, this is
yeah.
what we just experienced is what goes on in the nonprofit sector. So let's talk about the skill set of having strong communication skills and how if you know that you have that piece, that will make you a more valuable candidate.
Oh, absolutely. I think that being able to, first of all, be self sufficient when you get into an assignment, being able to come in and have open communication with your hiring manager and ask the important questions that will lead you to be able to do the project or, whatever the task is for the day effectively and efficiently without a lot of hand holding. I think that level of communication is what's helpful. So I think people who go in and want a lot of like check-ins throughout the day and want someone to follow up with them every step of the way versus being proactive and going in at the beginning of the day and saying, hey, you need this and this, here's the information I need as a person new to your organization to complete these tasks. If you provide me with this information, I can go about
Yeah,
completing those tasks throughout the day and really not have to bother you too much from the other full-time tasks that you're doing that you are so busy with that you needed to hire a temp in the first place. So I think that that's something that temporary candidates who get asked back, which is a big thing too, is I'll have candidate clients call back the next year and say, what about that person we had last year from September to October? Is Sarah available again? And it's because that person was able to go in. They knew when to speak up. They knew when to kind of, focus on their own work. They were able to communicate in a fashion that was, comprehensive and effective without interrupting the work of the full-time staff member. And, I'm not taking anything away. I know there's probably people that have worked as a temporary employee before that have had situations where they felt like they didn't get enough support or training when they were on site with the client. And I think that that is also a big part of the equation is that the org, and I say this in my, in our previous conversations about the client responsibility of managing a temporary employee.
yeah,
And, that is a huge part of it is that it has to be a collaboration, as you said in the beginning, between the two parties, that the expectations from the client are given clearly, and in return, the communication from the candidate that's working on a temporary project has to be there as well.
I love it. Let's talk about this factor, and we've been hearing more and more about this, which I think is fabulous. The issue of cultural humility,
Mm,
meaning that you're not going in to fix somebody or bend them to the arc of your will or your value set. This is really hard, especially in a time of polarization and civic
mm,
behavior um, that people have a lot less ability to compromise or see another side.
mm.
Talk to us about this and how are you seeing this issue? Are you seeing um, people on both sides from the candidate to the hiring manager being thoughtful about this? Or is this just something to talk about?
I think that it's a great
Point. And I honestly think it's something that has always been in the undercurrent of placing, especially candidates on an interim basis. So I can send somebody into a temporary position and it's supposed to be something where they're focused on one specific project, right?
Mhm.
What they find when they go into the database or they go into the event file or they go into the employee files if they're working in HR, and they're able to identify all of these opportunities that the organization has to improve, things that they need to change, things that they feel like doesn't match with the best practices from another organization that they worked for prior. I think that's super valuable information for the organization to have. However, the way in which you approach the organization that you're temping with said information is where we get into a sticky road. So I think that it's a level of emotional intelligence that some candidates naturally have the ability to share information or share their feedback on the way something is done within an organization without causing sort of the offense that a lot of employers will have where like, you know, just to put it sort of like, casually, it's like, hiring a temp to be my secretary and then they're telling me all the things I'm doing wrong with my job. Sometimes people can, it ruffles their feathers doing that. So it's also knowing like, at what level were you hired? Are you hired as an assistant? Are you hired on a certain project? Are you hired on, as a direct interim director? Those are very different
Yeah.
scenarios. And again, it goes back to communication,
Yeah.
setting up those expectations and saying, I just want you to focus on this project. And if you find other things that you want to work on, let me know and we can discuss which ones you can.
Mhm.
Or on the candidate end, saying to the client, I found these areas of opportunity within the project you have me working on. Would you like me to approach you with those? Or do you want me to just focus on the project that you've given me at hand? And then that puts the ball in the employer's in the hiring manager's court to
Mhm.
decide whether they want to move forward with those changes. Because it's impossible as a temporary employee to go in and just start making changes carte blanche, speaking up in every meeting. They try to include the temporary employee, in, certain staff meetings or strategic meetings. And then they have all these ideas and thoughts because they think they know better because they've come from another organization that did it differently. And I think that those types of attitudes are what can often cause, some personality clashes.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think that the increased polarization of our society, culture, et cetera, it is trickling down to the workplace as well.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something I think going into any environment, particularly if it's an organization that has any sort of political slant or is uh, interested in social justice or something like that, I think the employer's job is to really set up the culture of the organization so that people coming into it, whether they're a temp or a permanent placement, know what the culture is to have humility about.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's a tough thing. And I love what you just said. And that was really powerful about if you are somebody that's coming into an environment where you have experience, and that you can offer a different perspective or that wealth of knowledge, it's how you communicate it. I love what you said, the ability to say to that leadership, hey, I have some observations. If you ever want to chat about it, I'm happy to, share my thoughts, to kind of take it out of the um, punitive aspect of like, you're
Yes.
doing this wrong. Let's fix it, which is just like the worst feeling in the world. Let's talk about transferable tech skills. And obviously, we should have included spelling because I see now that this is skills is misspelled. So there we have it right there. That action. Hey, talk about this in your resume. Should you be listing the software and the programs that you work with, or we how do we share that we have access to this type of training?
Absolutely. I think this is a great point. And again, I think with candidates, particularly when they get to a higher level of seniority, they're not thinking about some of the nitty gritty on a day to day basis. Like, of course I use Excel. Of course I use Outlook. Of course I use LexisNexis. Of course I use Access. It kind of, they believe it's like, it goes without saying that I use these things. However, when it comes to your resume and submitting for a new job, the candidates or I'm sorry, the clients that are looking at your background have no idea what you know or don't know or what another organization uses on a daily basis. And I think that having your technical skills listed, number one, doesn't take up much space on your resume. um I think it's also helpful to list any like additional technical trainings you've received, whether that was through the job,
Mm.
or if you went to your local public library and got trained on Microsoft Office, or if you've taken some like webinars on how to use certain databases and research systems. All of those things are pertinent. And because the market is so saturated with candidates, it always is, but especially now as people are being laid off, as you said, the job market is completely tumultuous. And as the government shut down and layoffs continue, I think we're going to see that influx even more so in the nonprofit sector, because if you're coming out of the government, nonprofits is going to be a pivot point for you. And then all of my candidates are going to be in competition with people with very impressive resumes from governmental agencies. How do you make your resume stand out? Well, one of those ways is by, checking to see on the website of the organization, does it seem to be a tech savvy organization? Do they have a state of the art website? Goes to the point that it may be an organization that is using the most up to date information, the most up to date software. AI, dare I say it, AI.
Yeah.
That is, I just attended a conference with women in development that was all about using AI specifically for prospecting and fundraising.
Mhm.
So it is here and it seems to be here to stay. So making sure that you are staying abreast of all the changes and updates that are going on within the sector, and not just staying abreast of knowing about them, but seeking out opportunities for professional development in them and adding those things into your CV, your cover letters, your resume. All those things are just going to make you more competitive for the positions that you're up for, as much as your tenure, as much as, the prestige of the organizations that you've previously worked for. All of those things are going to be really important. So in my estimation, for what you get out of listing your tech skills on your resume and how much little space it takes up, the payoff is so great that you should definitely include it.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I think that's especially in the temp environment where sometimes people are like, oh, I have to do this. So it's not like a joyful thing. I get to hire a
Mhm.
temp. It's like, they're usually under duress. They're trying to plug a hole. They need it yesterday. I mean, you and I have talked about that off camera about that your profession is a go, go, go crisis kind of oriented profession. Somebody that can give a lot more confidence about their skills because they can say, look, I know this. I just got to believe it's going to, be escalated in how they're being viewed, right? By that hiring manager.
And sometimes, especially with temporary
Temporary work, the subject of our talk today, they are looking for candidates that have a specific technical skill going into that job because they don't have the time to train. If it's a full-time position with a salary, they probably have time for you to go through not only the general, orientation for the organization and learning the culture, but also technical training and all the systems that they use. For a temp job, they really need somebody to hit the ground running. Having that information on your resume and being able to speak to your tech skills is going to make you top of the list to get the temporary job and get you out working. And if you don't know the software and they use a particular software, it's a great place to learn because you're using it on the job instead of just doing a webinar about it or reading
Right.
about it in a magazine or online. You're actually using it day to day. And then you can parlay that experience into a full-time job interview and say, I know you use Razor's Edge. I just used it 2 weeks ago on the assignment I was on for a month.
Yeah.
And these are the ways in which I used it. So the other caveat to that, I would also say, is knowing how you use the software, not just that you did use it or the name of it, but also what functionality you participated in, and really like understanding how it was used in association with the project you were working on, I think is the most impressive way to leverage your technical skills.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I think that's really powerful and super important, given what we just talked about, where this for so many organizations is kind of, I hate to use the word crisis, but it's urgent. Let's
it's
put it
urgent.
that way.
Yep.
And so, and now at this time of the year, it's even more important because we're in Q4 and everybody's freaking out about their year end. They're trying to
Yes.
get through events, they're trying to get through year end, fundraising and meeting goals. And there's just so much pressure at this unique time of the year. It's kind of one of those things that makes it really interesting. This has been a fabulous conversation. Dana Scurlock, you are amazing. Dana is the director of recruitment at Staffing Boutique, one of our valued partners here on the Nonprofit Show. And we've never talked about this, but flipping the script, as we said at the beginning of the episode, and making ourselves think about what it would be like if we went into the temp environment, how we might flourish or look to do something like this. Thanks so much, Dana, for giving us a really new way to look at things.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks for bearing with me today. It was lovely to speak with you as always. Temporary work is one of my favorite subjects, so this is really fun.
Well, you know what, Dana, I think what you do, you've illuminated the aspect of why we need it, how we can use it, that it's not so perilous, that it can really be a super positive, exciting opportunity as opposed to a negative thing that we just get pushed into, right?
Yep,
And
exactly.
so I love this concept of talking about this. So thank you so much. I think if you needed to see an example of grace under fire, and we had a few technical issues in the beginning, but they all got resolved. We were able to have our conversation, and Dana never missed a stride. So you are professional, my friend.
This is not my first rodeo. I've had every unexpected thing that can happen with temporary assignments and recruiting. You're dealing with people, so you just got to roll with the punches.
I love it. Well, that's fabulous. Again, Dana Scurlock, she's with our friends over at Staffing Boutique. And Staffing Boutique is one of our original presenting sponsors, which is super cool to think about. And I'll tell the story very quickly. But the CEO and founder of Staffing Boutique, Katie Warnick, called me up right after we started doing this and said, "Hey, how do I get on your show? How do I become a sponsor?" And that was now almost 6 years ago.
Gosh.
Time
So
flies.
it does. So pretty powerful. We also have amazing support from American Nonprofit Academy, Bloomerang, Your Part-Time Controller, Interim Executives Academy, Holdings Nonprofit Banking, JMT Consulting, and Fundraisers Friday. These are the folks that make a difference in our lives each and every day. Dana, you've heard me say this, but as we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we leave with this message, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.